So today we're going to talk about the homeless population in the United States. So how many people are affected by homelessness? There's 552,000 people who were affected in 2018. And so 180,000 of those people were in families, 37,000 were veterans, and 36,000 were youth. According to a Yale study, 150 million people were homeless worldwide, but 1.6 billion people may have inadequate housing circumstances. Some misconceptions about the homeless population. A lot of people just assume that the homeless population, they're just drug dealers or they're drug addicts or they did it to themselves, when in reality, they're susceptible to loss of jobs and they are in circumstances that they can't really control. Some people think that they're lazy, but according to a national study, in order to survive, many people who experience homelessness are constantly in search for the necessities of life, such as food, shelter, and a source of income. Another misconception is that all homeless people are mentally ill. And so not all homeless people are mentally ill, although it does play a small part in their homelessness. So as you can see here, this is just a chart. So 35% of what triggers homelessness is actually a loss of job. So I feel like a lot of media and a lot of movies make homeless people look like they're just drug addicts and they did it to themselves, but really a lot of homeless people are actually searching for jobs and they want to be a functioning part of society, but they just don't have the opportunity to do so. So some causes, as I had stated earlier, poverty, so losing a job. And according to homelesshub.ca, a number of different challenges such as lacking a permanent address, not having regular access to showers, barriers to transportation, and other difficulties like mental illness make it difficult to obtain employment. And if homeless people have a job, if at all, it's usually a minimum wage job. So even if they were able to keep the job, obviously they wouldn't be able to make ends meet just because of the rise in housing rates. So there's an interview with 45-year-old William, who does not state his last name, who lives in Detroit. And so a quote from him was, you can't draw brush every homeless person and say we're one type of people in one type of category. The only thing we have in common when it comes down to it is that we're homeless. So a lot of people like to just put homeless people in buckets, saying like these people are drug addicts, these people are poor, these people don't like love their family, when in reality it's not the case. Another big cause is lack of health care and lack of affordable housing. So like we stated earlier, there's not a lot of affordable housing for homeless people. And then lack of access to healthcare is also a really big issue, where if a family's doing okay and they're making ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck, and then let's say someone gets like a chronic illness that they need to go to the hospital for, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So that happens quite often. And according to the National Coalition for the Homeless, for families and individuals struggling to pay the rent, a serious illness or disability can start a downward spiral into homelessness. And so housing rates have steadily been increasing since 2012. So like I stated earlier, even if they could have a job, they probably wouldn't be able to make ends meet. Another big cause, mostly for women and children, is domestic violence. So according to the National Coalition for the Homeless, half of women and children that are homeless are actually escaping domestic violence. So a lot of people don't really think about domestic violence and how women and children are escaping. And obviously it's not just exclusive to women and children, but that's the biggest portion of it. And so this chart, you can see if gender plays a role, race or ethnicity, age, prior history, and time since release for formerly incarcerated people. So people who have been incarcerated still want to get back up on their feet, but it's just hard due to like obvious circumstances. So it gives you a little bit of demographics for that. And some of the effects. So most people tend to think the worst about the homeless population, and a lot of dehumanization goes on. So obviously we're not born with the tendency to dehumanize people, rather we learn it through the events that we go through. So according to the National Coalition for the Homeless, 8 lethal attacks and 64 non-lethal attacks occurred in 2016 and 2017 throughout the United States. So help that can be done. There are shelters being built using public funding and in densely populated areas. Although homeless people may have little access to health care, there are publicly funded systems that are being in place. And there's a lot of job trainings that are getting set up in these shelters that are being popped up in densely populated areas. So what can we do? Homelessness is often a circumstance that cannot be controlled. So the majority of homeless people are people who are just like you and me, but just get caught up in, circumstances that they're not able to keep track of or they're not able to control. So what we can do as society is to stop avoiding it. Rather, we can start to help, and you can donate money to shelters or talk to local politicians. Thank you.